Married Redditors, what was the most obnoxious request made by one of your wedding guests? My MIL tried to manipulate my wife into letting the MILF's boyfriend walking my wife down the aisle instead of her father. Holy crap. Mother-in-law asked us if we could reschedule our wedding closer to stepbrothers so she could come into town once for both. Our date was booked a year previously during the time of the request. He's more than welcome to move his. While my wife and I were taking pictures with guests and some were still getting their meal, my grandmother cut our wedding cake and began serving it. We never even saw what it looked like. Oh no, this one made me sad. When my cousin and her husband were planning on getting married, they wanted a small wedding. Something like 40 to 50 people. Both her mother and future mother-in-law weren't having that and took it upon themselves to invite everyone and anyone they could. The guest list quickly shot up to around 700 people. They ended up changing the venue to somewhere way out of state to cut down the guest list and have the smallish wedding they wanted. My family cancelled their hotel reservations to rent a big house together. Nobody told us and so we got stuck paying $800 for the hotel shuttle that was completely empty. My wife's parents refused to pay for anything if we didn't hold our wedding at their church. We said fine, we would pay for it ourselves. They then tried to dictate that we could not serve alcohol or have dancing at the reception, which they weren't paying for. We told them they didn't have to attend if it was a problem for them. My fiance's parents are doing this to us, paying for it, but making us have the ceremony in their church. I told my fiancée we should wait a couple years to save up for our own wedding that we want, but she doesn't want to create that kind of tension with her family. Instead, we're accepting their gift and I'm starting this in-law relationship with a nice bit of resentment. My in-laws refused to attend unless we got married in their Midwestern state. My husband and I met and live on the East Coast. We married in our city, giving his family 6+ months notice. They did not attend. My great aunt called my bride and asked her to come pick her up from the airport 4 hours before the wedding. Taxes are a thing, aren't Pearl? LOL. We actually had people ask to stay at my house the night of my wedding, and the couple of days leading up to it. No, I don't need to be entertaining guests when I'm getting married. There are these things called hotels and they're awesome. Reserve a room at one for yourself. A couple showed up at the reception too late for the dinner. It was already over, so they went into the restaurant of the hotel and charged their meals to the wedding party. Not on the day of the wedding, but my monster-in-law requested that my wife's entire family boycott our wedding. When my wife told her mother that we were getting married, her response was, "Why are you doing this to me?" and then told my wife that she wouldn't go and that she would convince her whole family to boycott the wedding. This devastated my wife. She told my stepmom, who took her out to find a wedding dress that day, and she offered my parents' backyard for the ceremony and reception. Well, after my monster-in-law found out that my stepmom took my wife dress shopping, she freaked out because that was supposed to be something she and her daughter did together, on her mind, and she confronted my wife and my wife was like, "Why do you care? You're not even going." At that point the mill realized it was gonna happen without her and she changed her tune and got on board pretty quick. Awesome stepmom. Stepmom sounds more of a mother than biological mom. My brother's wife asked me to postpone the wedding a year or two because she was going to try to get pregnant the following year. She also insisted the wedding cake be vegan for religious reasons. I was fine with providing a vegetarian meal option for the few guests I knew would want it, but the cake? Number. That's your religion, not mine. She ended up not coming anyways. I'm fine with that. My husband and I changed our relationship status on Facebook to married while on our honeymoon. An aunt on his mom's side commented "wow" and called his mother demanding to know why she wasn't invited. My husband and I have been together for 6 years and I've never met the woman. Of course we didn't invite her or her flock of kids and grandkids. Not to mention, my parents, who paid for the wedding, just built us a house on their farm that was completed 2 weeks prior. We didn't want to abuse my parents' kindness with too many guests. His aunt has gone on to tell the entire family how mean and rude we are. I changed my last name on FB to a fake one when looking for jobs after college. Distant relatives got so offended they weren't invited to the wedding. Was single. The crap storm that caused made me realize I won't invite those family members to my hypothetical wedding someday. They called my grandma and yelled at her. Frick you, if you have a problem with that, yell at me, not my grandma. It was the handful of guests who couldn't be bothered to retain the address and directions that were provided to them several times via US mail, email, and internet link, and who finally, when all that failed, needed to text me repeatedly to get clarifications on the directions instead of just using fricking Google. You know how busy a person is on their wedding day? I had more important things to do than answer texts about which exits to take. I very specifically had my little sister be the phone czar for the reason of avoiding just that problem. For me, the obnoxious part was the stuff people did without requesting it. My dumb little cousin requested to wear a white dress. She's 17 and well on her way to being an Instagram model, so people would have congratulated her all day. And that was still less annoying than the part where my mother-in-law, without notifying anyone, brought a freaking shitload of potted succulents because she had heard there would be so I could tell my white dress wearing cousin to shut the frick up and change. But I had nothing prepared for a pallet of cactus out of the blue. We still grumble about that one. I've made this comment before elsewhere, but it's always worth a retell. I'm a wedding photographer. Last year, the mother of the bride wanted the DJ to help her play a game at the reception. The game was this. The bride sits blindfolded on a chair, while the groom and groomsmen circle around her. She then has to feel their junk and guess which one is the groom. The DJ was inexperienced, but had minimal enough common sense to come ask for my professional opinion. I told him if he wanted to keep his job, he would never in a million years do that, and if mob comes back, he needed to keep conveniently forgetting about it. One of the bridesmaids brought her fiancé to the wedding, and wanted our photographer to do an impromptu engagement photo shoot. Photographer laughed in her face. Best photographer ever. The day before the event, husband's grandma asked if any part of the wedding was going to be outside. It was. She asked what would happen if it was cold in May. I told her she should bring a jacket. She said, incredulously, "But I'm 80 years old." To this day I don't know what she expected me to do to make the weather not chilly or her not 80. My grandmas, both of them, left the room when we did our toasts because we used actual champagne. We offered the non-alcoholic sparkling juice stuff for them, but that was not acceptable because it looked like alcohol. They were so offended that we were drinking they refused to participate and returned once the toasts were done. I had a small wedding and our budget included putting all 16 attendees, ourselves included, up in the bed and breakfast that we held our ceremony dinner in. The day of the wedding, my mother tried to pressure my husband and I into switching from the honeymoon suite into the room she and my father were in with my kid sister. Small bed, crowded, and a creepy mini bed in the closet for my kid sister. Unless I misunderstood her, we would have also had to share the room with my kid sister on our wedding night, because of the spare bed being in that room. She only asked because she thought that the whirlpool bath in our room would be nice for her back. I told her no, that we had specific plans for the bathtub that night, and she dropped it. My husband and I had a hot tub in our hotel room and were pretty excited to get up to some hanky-panky after the wedding. So we get up to the room at about 1 AM, run the bath, get in and practically both fall asleep. Best laid intentions. Weddings are so knackering. Mel wouldn't let me be in photos with her side of the family because I wasn't real family, even though I just married their daughter. I got this crap for years from my SOS family, almost 10 years together and I'm still not real family. In 3 weeks I'm eloping with their son. Treat me poorly for a decade, you get to miss your only son's wedding. A few days before my wedding my husband's aunt called us wanting to do individual family photos. I had a photographer I paid for that was working on my schedule and now she wanted to make arrangements with me to get individual family photos. I refused to entertain the idea of it and said I find it extremely rude she would call the bride with less than 5 days till the wedding and ask a huge favor and change in the wedding. Well then a bunch of people got involved. I told them all no and I won't hear any more of it. If you want family photos hire your own photographer. I bet the photographer would have been pissed that your family was essentially trying to get in freebies. 2. I personally probably would have charged you more if you asked ahead of time. If your husband's aunt's plan was to surprise him with it, I would have probably said no. At my sister's wedding reception, our cousin asked her and my new bro-in-law if she could stop the music and dancing while she sang a song she had written about their wedding. My sister was annoyed but agreed because wow, she wrote this song just for them. So we all stop dancing and stand around awkwardly while she sings this long song that doesn't really make sense but has to do with love or whatever. A few weeks later my sister finds out through Facebook that this cousin sang the exact same song at multiple other weddings. The nerve. Stopping weddings dead in their tracks to be the focus of attention by lying that the song you're singing was written just for them. We all got a good laugh out of that. Our culture dictates that we pay for our guests' hotels. Not a big deal. Anywho, we had an uncle come in, check in, decide nap, and left for another hotel paid for by his son, who is pretty well off. That meant that we had to pay for his hotel room even though he didn't stay there. My wife was PO'd. It's all good. His son, my wife's first cousin, is pretty cool and makes it up with gifts for our daughter. My mother-in-law wanted to wear a white gown down the aisle, insisted, denied, then complained the wedding didn't focus on her enough. Her dad's side of the family wanted us to pay for all their hotels and airfare, would have been about 20k, all said and done. When we refused, they said we weren't being inclusive to the part of the family that had to travel and would not be attending. Yet, they're 16 hours away. But my family is about 20 hours away and they had no problem arranging their own transportation. Unfortunately, we feel that your refusal to cater to those of us who love free stuff is of the utmost disrespect, and we will not be able to attend in light of this frankly disgusting attack. My matron of honor's husband left just as the reception started, and came back an hour later with his grandmother and little brother, who were not invited. They were all dressed up, they ate, and he brought them home, gone for another hour. Geez, I was in a wedding a few years ago and I thought it was rude when 2 bridesmaids left right after dinner. My father told me he was willing to give us money toward our wedding, but he demanded to be able to invite a huge list of guests in addition to our already planned list. I kindly told him that the extra expense of feeding those guests would exceed the money he wanted to give us, and we declined the gift. The other obnoxious thing was my aunt giving a toast after the best man, unplanned, unwanted. We're from different countries, so we had one wedding near all her family with a small group of my close family friends flown in, and then the same near my family with some of her family friends flown in. The night before the wedding in her country, her family had a small party at the house they were sharing for the event. I was expected to be there, but my family and friends were explicitly not invited and told not to come. They had flown halfway around the world for this and were expected to spend the night before the wedding just hanging out at their hotel. At the wedding near my family, I had about a half dozen of my family members who either didn't RSVP or RSVP'd that they would not be coming, who then decided 3 days before the wedding that they would come after all. But instead of calling me directly so we could inform the venue, pay the extra money, and reorganize the seating, they just casually mentioned it in passing to my grandmother, who then casually mentioned it in passing to my mom the day before the goddamn wedding. So both of our families contain some inconsiderate buttholes, I guess. People always seem to think they can just show up or it's no big deal to be a no-show. I don't get it. My sil just got married and a husband and wife who insisted their children come as a no-show because one of the kids was crabby. My ex told me about when she finally did get married. Her big family all plainly said they would attend. Her passive-aggressive mother got all her siblings to come to their house so everyone could ride with them in their large Suburban and make it a family trip together. My ex waited and waited and no sign from her family and no cell reception from any of her brothers and sisters. The next morning her and her new husband are woken by her family expecting them to cook breakfast. They had lived only a few hours from Yellowstone Park, but decided on their daughter's wedding day was a perfect day to finally go, and the next day just wake them up to make them cook. See? We made it clear that children were not invited to our wedding. We saw it as a way for parents to take a night off, party a little, relax, sleep in, etc. Plus we had to pay for those plates. There was no chicken nuggets on the menu, and our families have over 30 plus kids total. I had a cousin call me 2 days before the wedding stating that there was no way they could come without their 3-year-old, and that we should pay for their room if we wanted them to attend or they would not come. They did not attend, but they did send a card we got about 2 months later that just said congratulations. I like the threat of "or we won't come" as if that's a bad thing. Your presence at my wedding will not make or break my day. Good riddance. Unfortunately, now Sil, while completely s-faced at 3 PM on a Wednesday as she is prone to doing, got up on a table in a restaurant and screamed at me and my husband for daring to plan our wedding before she and my brother got engaged. Said brother told her a few days later that he had no intentions of getting married no matter the person, and suddenly a month later she's magically pregnant. The actual request, if you can call it that, was for us to postpone our wedding by another year so she could have her baby shower that weekend. Yeah, that didn't happen. At my sister's wedding, my dad bought everyone at the wedding a round for each guest to cheers to during the speeches. Someone on my brother-in-law's side ordered himself an 80-pound bottle of wine. We asked people to let us know if they had any allergies or religious dietary requirements. Some people came back to us with preferences of ingredients they didn't like, a fact that became quite obvious after I had to clarify how serious the allergy was and if other related ingredients might cause an issue. How pretentious can you be? I'm allergic to everything except prime rib, mashed potatoes and broccoli. I also can only eat New York cheesecake, no other style of cheesecake. It wasn't a guest, it was the owner of our reception venue. We hired a restored Victorian house for our reception. It didn't include any catering, drinks, tables or chairs. Just an empty room. We supplied everything else. Obviously, this meant we had to coordinate a bunch of vendors. From the moment we started inquiring, the deal was that the owner would hand us the keys to the house the night before the wedding. We would hand them back the morning after the wedding. Whatever we did in between was our business, as long as the keys were returned on time and the place was left as we found it. The night before the wedding, my bridal party and I went to the venue to set up. We were all done and about to leave when the owner appeared and demanded I give him back the keys. We argued extensively. He eventually threatened to cancel our booking, so I reluctantly handed them over. He promised that he would be present to let the caterers in at 4 PM the next day. I didn't trust him, so I sent my dad to the venue at 4 PM, straight after the ceremony, to be sure. Lucky I did. 4 PM rolls around and the doors remained locked. My dad calls the owner, who says he's gone for a lovely drive in the country with his family. He's half an hour away and has no plans to return anytime soon. My dad is not a man who lets anyone frick with his baby girls, so he gave the owner heck and threatened legal action. So the owner returns and lets our vendors in, half an hour late. The next morning, the day after my freaking wedding, I get a phone call from the owner at 7 AM. I was fast asleep so it went to voicemail. He leaves a message demanding that I return the keys. The keys he took off me the night before the wedding. He called again at 8 AM and left a message saying he had found the broken key fob, electronic keys, in the driveway of the venue, and telling me that I would be paying for replacements. Again, he took the keys off me before the wedding. He had them all along. If they got lost or broken, it was his problem, not mine. I eventually surfaced at about 9 AM and called him back. I am a freaking monster when I'm hungover, so I tore shreds off him. He tried to say he never took the keys off me. I offered to bring my 8 freaking witnesses to court to testify that he freaking did. That made him change his tune pretty quickly. So yeah, I'd say calling me at 7 AM the morning after my wedding to demand something I never had was the most obnoxious request I got. My mom was really late to the ceremony, and we waited for her. My mom was still upstairs getting ready when my sister got married. We have her multiple warnings before they started. She was so late she missed the entire ceremony. She was mad that we didn't wait. I'm getting married in September. I made it clear we aren't waiting either. My wife and I had a decent sized wedding. Maybe 150-160 people. My wife's side are pretty much all local, but my extended family pretty much all live in my home state across the country. At the wedding, my uncle, Mom's bro and aunt and cousin actually stood up and started arguing with us while we were doing our rounds to say hello to everyone because we didn't sit down and talk to them for an extended period of time. Mind you, this is an aunt and uncle that I maybe see once every 10 years and my aunt is a straight up psychopath. But when I tried to explain that we were having a family brunch at my parents' house the next day, they told us they couldn't make it because they had tickets to the local MLB team and would be going on an extended road trip because cousin and uncle were attempting to see a game at every park. And so they couldn't wait to see us and we're incredibly rude for not carving out 30 minutes to sit with them at the reception to my own wedding. When my mom found out, she got an angry look on her face for a second and then calmed back down and just said, "God, they're both such buttholes," and continued on with her mog duties. Now it's years later and my mom's mother has died and I've heard that I'm not welcome to the wake because it is at uncle's house and aunt hasn't forgiven me for slighting them and they're not speaking with me, which seems exactly the same as the last 20 years, so who cares? As my father-in-law opened the door to walk down the aisle with my wife, one of his cousins came up from behind and asked them to stop for a picture. My grandma is this type of person. I had the DJ announce beforehand that no photography was allowed during the ceremony. Kept my dang grandma from getting in the way of our very expensive and talented photographer. A friend threw a fit because she wanted to take her children to the wedding. I said that they would not have a babysitter on site. There would be no accommodations for any children, nor special menu for them to eat, and that we were out of chairs and that she was welcome to bring them if they could be squished inside, but no special treatment for any kids was expected. My aunt chucked a fit when my cousin had a child-free wedding. She kept saying it wasn't fair on her sister to have to leave them with a babysitter in another state. She didn't actually want them at the wedding. She just wanted to take them to the zoo the next day. My mother complained about our black and gold wedding invitations. It absolutely devastated her that I'd use such a funereal color scheme and she sent a long email about how terrible they were. I asked my aunt, her sister, what she was expecting me to do. Resend the invitations? Bonus points. Guess what color her dress was at my wedding? Mill wanted us to have a destination wedding at a resort in a tropical country. She spent months trying to get us to do this. Neither of us like the heat. But hey, that didn't stop her from making my sil and her husband, who both also dislike the heat, get married in Cuba 2 years earlier, so I kind of blame them for enabling her. Should have had a mild 50-degree November wedding in Seattle and then told Mill your honeymoon was going to be to Australia in the dead of summer. That would have been fun. Everyone was cool for the most part. However, we invited my friend old roommate and his girlfriend, but between the time invitations went out and the wedding they had broken up. She asked us if she could bring the new guy as her +1, and we had to tell her that she was actually the +1 originally, and had to basically uninvite her. If she didn't say anything, she would have remained invited due to mindlessness on it. At first we felt bad, but we quickly got over it. She didn't really know anyone else at the wedding, so she would have either tried to hang around us, which wouldn't have worked with the 1000 ways we were getting pulled, or with her ex. It was a situation begging for drama, so we nipped it in the bud. Ouch, that's actually kind of sad. This happened to my mom at her and my dad's wedding. Her own mother sat out in the car until everyone went inside and then made both my grandfathers escort her inside. Also, she wore all black like it was a funeral. This was because she didn't like my dad. Now fast forward to my brother's wedding. My mom was helping the bride's mom set up the wedding venue and decorate. The same grandmother wanted only my mom to pick her up, but when my mom said she was too busy, because of wedding stuff, obviously, and my dad said he would pick her up, my grandmother threw a fit and didn't come to the wedding. Fast even more forward to my wedding. Said grandmother wasn't there either. She was visiting my uncle a state away. Not really drama or anything, but yeah, she made lots of things about her. Was offered a few $1,000s to not get married to the girl. Been married 13 years, and in hindsight I should have taken the money and then married her anyway. Dang morals. There was a Reddit post about something similar a while back. A Mill bribed the bride to not marry her fiance. She took the money, and then got married anyways, and when the Mill confronted her, she just threatened to tell the husband that she tried to bribe her into not marrying him. Mill shut up and never mentioned it again. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.